Thank you for joining our webinar this morning. My name is Melissa. I am the Director of Digital Content here at Infused Innovations. Today we have Joel Evans with us, a voice and emerging and communication collaboration technologies expert, and he works with us here on the Infused team. I'm excited to chat with you, Joel.
Hey, Melissa, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you too.
Thanks. Let's get into it. Organizations, as we know, have been migrating over to the cloud and transitioning to fully remote work, having their employees work from home for a while now. Remote work has been growing at an exponential rate. But now, with the current pandemic at play and organizations having their storefront or offices shutting down, can you talk to us a little bit about how this is accelerating, if you will, the amount of organizations that are transitioning to remote work?
Sure, absolutely. So what's interesting is I've been telling people I've been in unified communications a long time, and I was actually working on a big project for one of my clients right before the pandemic hit, and we were focusing at the time on how to make people successful while working in person and working with remote people. And it's not just a technology challenge, but it's also a cultural change because
Mhm.
you have to be aware and treat the people that are remote working as if they were in person. And now, the pandemic hit, so now it's actually flipped. As people are starting to try and go back to their offices, you now have people who have set up these incredible home offices for themselves in some cases. In other cases, they're working on a kitchen table, but they're very used to and have been forced to adapt to working remotely. So it's become an interesting challenge in that respect because now we're going to have truly a paradigm shift as it flips from the primary having been in office to now the primary being remote. And I think the other interesting thing, you mentioned how it's accelerating. Companies were scrambling. There were a lot of companies who said, "I don't really support remote workers," or they were starting to put remote workforce plans in place. And all of a sudden, they had to really accelerate whatever they needed to do to make people successful working remotely. And I think a lot of things that happened there, which we can go into more detail on, is they sort of grabbed whatever they could to try and be as successful as they could as fast as they could. And I think that that's really what we're now turning the corner on as things start slowing down. They can take a closer look at whatever the infrastructure they have, whatever they've invested in, and start making some decisions there.
Right. Let's talk about utilizing the Microsoft Stack for remote work. So, what is this and what does it come with?
So there's a whole bunch of different pieces that are part of the remote stack from Microsoft. I think the biggest one that everyone's talking about is Microsoft Teams. So using Microsoft Teams, it's built. All these things are built as unified communication suites, but Infused, we actually call it unified collaboration because that's really where it's going to. If you think about it, going back to Microsoft Teams, it's an all-in-one solution. You have the ability to chat with people, over messages, share documents, communicate and collaborate that way, and then you can also instantly do a voice over IP call or start an instant meeting, start sharing a virtual whiteboard where everyone is communicating, collaborating at the same time, and also doing it very securely with confidence since it's part of the Microsoft stack.
I can imagine that there's a lot of anxiety for an organization to make this transition to remote work. Can you speak to the process of what that setup and management looks like? Is this an easy process or is this a difficult process?
Well, we have an awful lot of experience doing it, so in our case, we could make it easy for them. I think the first thing, if they wanted to, even before they engaged with us, is doing a deeper dive on a discovery. There's a big piece to it. Strategy is always one of those words that people don't like to hear, but it is a big piece of it. You have to have some sort of a strategy. Like what are you hoping to gain out of this? Are you just trying to enable your people to work remotely? Are you hoping for communication and collaboration? Do they want to have their office phones ringing through Microsoft Teams? What does all that look like? Is it an investment in hardware and software, both? But the big thing is, as far as easy or hard, what we really try to do is take the complication out of it. So it seems like it could be very complicated if you do some research and you say, what's the Microsoft stack? Like you just asked me, there's calling plans, there's licenses, there's like 300 different, SKUs to look at and figure out. Obviously, infused innovations can certainly help streamline a lot of that. But I think the bigger thing that we focus on is how fast can we just get some sort of a pilot going to get you comfortable with how easy this, solution is to actually, play around with.
One of the biggest fears that we often hear from organizations is that they are afraid that the transition might impact the quality of their communication and collaboration among their employees. Can you tell us if this is the case?
So I don't think it's the case as long as it's done the right way. As I mentioned, there's discovery, there's a bit of a strategy, but really I think the key part is how quickly can you define and roll out a pilot or a proof of concept and really start showing people how it mirrors and then improves workflow. So using the Microsoft stack, you can use tools like Power Automate. You can really make something like Teams your center point, right? So you I think where people have a lot of trepidation is, all right, now I have Zoom, now I have this, now I have that. I've got, four different technologies I have to play with to be successful. What's nice about the Microsoft stack is, let's say we start with Teams, I start messaging you, you get an account, we start messaging each other. I send a Word doc to you, we look at it, we play with it together. We escalate to a phone call. It's really, that's how you can really accelerate it and make it an easier process.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously building training and use cases around it, getting people excited about what that future can really look like. The idea that I think I should also highlight that a lot of people think communication and collaboration, they're sitting at their desktop, they're sitting at their laptop. Again, not to promote it too much, but using the Microsoft stack, since you mentioned it, really it's communication and collaboration, from anywhere with anyone at any time and literally on any device, which is pretty amazing.
You mentioned the security part of it. So, can you talk to me a little bit about this? Let's say we're an organization and we've transitioned to being fully remote. We've got all of our important business documents, our data. How do we secure it all?
Well, that's all part of, obviously there's folks at Infuse that can go into a lot more detail here, but it's all part of the Microsoft stack. Again, if you use, just as an example, if you use Teams as that center point, Teams actually seamlessly integrates OneDrive and SharePoint. Which certainly are secure there. You can have, dual factor authentication. You can make sure that everything is authenticated the right way and secure the right way. You can even control at a permission level at a team. Inside Teams, you can create a team, you can create channels, and you can limit who can access what files where and when. And again, at that point, it's not a matter of, if I'm on my iPhone, maybe I can't access it. The understanding is that it's really more about roles and permissions. So the device at that point becomes agnostic. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I better email myself at my personal email address so I can open the document. You know that you can actually have that same experience on any device that you can log into, securely with your with your corporate email address.
We talked a little bit about security, and I know sort of like the meat of this conversation is collaboration and communication. So, can you tell us some of your personal favorite tools that really help empower employees with collaboration and communication?
Absolutely. So I'll give a case in point. This was pre-pandemic, although I've done it since. But it was coming out of a lunch meeting, and somebody wanted to have a conversation with me. So they sent me an instant meeting on Teams. We joined the Teams meeting together. We were talking. I was on my iPhone. He was in his office. We immediately then, turned on the cameras. Now we're having a video conference, which was, fantastic and seamless.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wanted my feedback on a Word document. So he shared the Word doc, and we started editing and collaborating in real time. And keep in mind, I'm on my iPhone at this point, occasionally zooming in, tapping around. And then inside of Teams, he shared a whiteboard. And no joke, we started whiteboarding together. He, of course,
Wow.
was on a Surface Hub at the office, and I was on my iPhone. It just gives you an idea of, is it something that I would do on a primary basis, using my iPhone as a whiteboard? No, but in a pinch, it was, fantastic to be able to effortlessly, just inside of one suite, just go in and out of all these different tools. And I continue to really appreciate it. I mean, you can have limited functionality inside of Teams and edit documents together, or you can actually launch the full-blown, suite and have full collaboration right there. So Gone are the days of, oh, I have to convert it, I have to open it here, I have to open it there. They've really done and I've been a long time user of Microsoft and Google and other products, even back to, the Pocket PC days with mobile. They've done such a phenomenal job of enabling the collaboration at this point. It's very exciting.
Wow, yeah, that's a great example of modern workplace, being able to pull out your phone and use your finger as a virtual
Exactly.
whiteboard. So let's say an organization's ready to make the switch. So how can they make this as simple as possible? What's their first step?
I think their first step is really, as I mentioned, doing some sort of a discovery. It doesn't have to be a deep dive. I'm not a big fan of let us go away for 3 months and do a big assessment and then come back. It's really about how fast can we start making changes and start feeling the benefits of it all. So I think the discovery first, what we see a lot of is there's a lot of different products in use at a company to try and make up what companies may already be paying for without even realizing it. So Teams does the chat, the messaging, the collaboration, does all that stuff, and certainly, conference calls, etc. And what I've seen in a lot of organizations is they bought Zoom, they bought Slack, or they use Asana, or so they've got all these other products that are sort of floating all around.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a discovery, either deep or high level, just to understand what's in play today, and then really, what do you want as your future? What I always tell people is, I'm the technology guy, so you shouldn't worry about that. Just tell me what you want, and I'll tell you how we can make it happen.
Well,
Like,
that
don't
makes
get
it easy.
yeah, just don't get like, as I mentioned, if you could go crazy looking at all the different licenses and the plans and this, that, and the other across all these different software stacks. Like, don't think about it. Just think about how great would it be if everyone could have the example that I just gave you, where I'm picking up my iPhone and doing instant communication and collaboration, and we'll make that happen.
Joel, would you say that we're sort of past the point where an organization should be considering going remote, and that it should sort of just become more of an urgency now to make this transition happen?
Absolutely. I think that there was a lot of hesitation before, and if the hesitation is still there, it might really just be because they thought that maybe they couldn't do it securely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we've proven that we can definitely do it securely. The products themselves have advanced so much in the time of the pandemic, and especially like even Microsoft Teams will adjust based on the bandwidth. So if you're in a poor coverage area, it'll actually adjust accordingly. And they're all sort of constantly copying each other. So if you see a new cool feature on Zoom, chances are you'll see it on Teams. I think everyone is starting to realize, hey, we have to go remote. What does that look like? And again, I think the other part is people are going to be wanting to go back to the offices too. I've already seen it with a number of our clients.
Mm-hmm.
So then what does that now look like? That's, again, something different than what they left, back in February.
Right. Well, thank you for joining me here today, Joel. It was wonderful chatting about remote work and collaboration and what that looks like with the Microsoft stack. It was so great to have you on here.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
If you'd like to learn more about remote work and collaboration, send us a contact form at info@infuseinnovations.com or go check out our website at infuseinnovations.com. See you then.